For some questions, I expected to find a big difference. For some, I expected no difference at all. And for some questions, well, I just found them funny. Question 1. When I put a call out for questions to ask, dozens of people suggested this. So first, let's see how the general public responded. There wasn't a significant difference between any of the demographics there. Dog person is safely in the lead. As for my audience, and I can't explain that. I don't think I've ever made a video about cats or dogs or animals at all. Maybe if infrastructure person was an option, that would have won by a landslide, but something about this audience makes you more likely to be a cat person. The internet likes cats, I guess. Next question. I put a call out for academics who are looking for a large audience to poll, and while only one of those questions actually made it into the survey, I really find it fascinating. This came from researchers at the School of Advanced Study at the University of London who are investigating olfactory mental imagery, the ability to imagine scents. I got a load of suggested questions from people who are interested in aphantasia. Aphantasiacs are people who don't have a mind's eye, but that's already been polled a lot. This is asking whether you have a mind's nose. It took a while to hammer out the question into a form that would work for the polling company, so it's not perfect. It does exclude folks who can imagine smells but can't imagine pictures or sounds, but that should just be a very small number of people. Here are the results from the public, and they are puzzling because they do not match what the researchers expected at all. About a quarter of folks said they can't imagine a loved one's face or play back a familiar song in their head. Now, aphantasia like that is a thing, absolutely, but it's meant to affect only a small percentage of people, probably less than 5%, so that indicates the question might have gone wrong somewhere. The results from my audience, meanwhile, well, they're more or less what the researchers expected. That makes a lot more sense. The most likely explanation, I think, is that it's a complicated question. It requires thought, and the public who are being asked, well, they're being paid to answer. A significant number of people won't think about the question and will pick whichever answer will get them through the survey as fast as possible. So in this case, I would trust my audience to be more representative of the world at large, just because there's no profit motive there. So in this case, my guess is that you're normal. Now, when I put the call out for questions, there were a lot of divisive but meaningless ones suggested, whether the toilet paper should go over or under, whether the centre or the edge of the brownie is better, but no one suggested, should you put 1 or 2 spaces after a period, or a full stop if you're British. And that's the reason I went for the question, because it's divisive out there in the world, but no one in my audience thought to ask about it. HTML, the language that the web is built on, collapses white space. In the code that makes up websites, it doesn't matter if you use 1 or 2 or 50 spaces, they all get crushed down to 1, unless you specifically tell it not to. And a lot of sites don't bother doing that. So often, if you do type 2 spaces after a period, it'll appear as 1 to whoever's reading it. I'm not going to weigh in on the argument myself, because it could be a whole video on its own, but I will say this. Wow, does my audience disagree with the world here. The public are almost split down the middle. 55% say 1 space, 45% say 2. If you break it down by age, there is a trend towards 1 space, but even among 18 to 24-year-olds, it's still only about 70-30. My audience? 95% 1 spaces. Even for people over 65, more than 3/4 just use 1 space, and my theory on this is simple. Most of the audience for this poll came from Twitter. I did try to post it on my YouTube community tab as well, and you'll crash Google